Hey, Nuggets fans, it's just nice to get a win, and first time in Nuggets history that we're going to playoffs. It's amazing. It's amazing feeling, but we have 4 more wins to go. Bye-bye.
What do you think Joker has proven so far with this playoff run?
Man, that's a really interesting question. For me, he hasn't proven anything. And why do I say that? Because I already know he's a great player. I think he's shown other people nationally that he's real. Like, what he's doing is real. The MVPs are real. The triple-doubles are real. All the narratives, the silly narratives this year, are just that, silly and somewhat ignorant. And I think Nikola has gone through 3 rounds now where he's averaging a triple-double in the playoffs. Have you seen any stat padding out there? I'm serious. Like enough of the silliness. Like, the guy is a great player. Give him his damn respect. Stop chopping him down at the knees, man. He's a great player, and give him the respect he deserves.
First thing is this, man. Congratulations. What you guys just did is not easy. First time the Nuggets ever swept a team in the playoffs in the Western Conference Finals. Let's go. All right, so congratulations. I heard somebody mention this, and I couldn't agree more. Enjoy it for a night. All right, you guys have been saying all playoffs long, all year long. Our goal was not to get to the finals. All right, we have 4 more wins. We're gonna have to work extremely hard for it. Yes, sir. All right, no matter who we play, it's about us. Proud of you guys. Love all of you. Bring it in. Let's go on home. As always, man. Family on 3. 1, 2, 3.
Family member J.A. Adande is here. J.A.
The other brother from another.
Where you at? Good to see you, brother.
Where you at?
Where you
Coming
at?
from the
Hey,
lovely
man.
Lakeside campus of Northwestern University.
I was gonna say, man, that is like, this is the office. You let us into the home/campus office. This is the setup. When people come in to see Professor Adande, and you do this on purpose. You have the bobbleheads in the back so they won't be intimidated. Coming in, you disarm the students. They see the bobbleheads, and they're like, this dude is cool. Then you start talking to them about their grades, and that's when they start to cower a little bit. But
Man, it starts to feel like a torture chamber, right?
You kind of slow play this thing. Look, hey, Jay, we just saw and heard the Denver Nuggets, heard from the Denver Nuggets, saw a little bit of them in action. They are going to the NBA Finals. I'm excited for the Nuggets. They were the best team for most in the Western Conference, best team for most of the season. And we kept waiting. A lot of us kept waiting for something to happen that didn't happen. They handled Minnesota in round 1. They handled Phoenix in round 2. And they easily dispatched the Lakers in round 3. They've got a 2-time MVP. They got an elite number 2 in Jamal Murray. They've got really good role players. They got good defenders. All of this stuff. And yet, J.A., I think Michael Malone wasn't just talking about writers. He may have been talking about the basketball public when he said, I'm going to put we in there, we are a little silly and somewhat ignorant. Because you want to talk about a new narrative. The new narrative is, the Denver Nuggets in the NBA Finals, most likely against the Miami Heat. That would be market number 16 versus market number 18. It may be aesthetically pleasing, but it's not great for the bottom line. And as a great artist from Denver once sang, that's the way of the world. Plant your flower, plant a flower, you get a pearl. Okay. Hey, Philip Bailey. All right, look, that's the way it
I didn't
goes.
know he was from Denver. Oh, shout out to Denver. Okay.
Shout out Denver.
Great
Shout out
songs.
Denver.
Right.
Philip Bailey.
That's the way of the world, right? And this is the world. I'm going to quote from the movie Network, which was made in the 1970s and still holds up incredibly well today. It's a movie that really predicts the rise of reality television, the problems with corporate ownership of media, all of that, right? And there's a speech that Ned Beatty gives. Ned Beatty basically, he got nominated for the Best Supporting Actor for 6 minutes. That's all he's in the movie. He delivers a speech, an all-timer. You talk about that's the way of the world.
No question.
It's a similar
question.
theme. He says, we no longer live in a world of nations and ideologies. The world is a college of corporations inexorably determined by the immutable bylaws of business. And that's what we're talking about here. This is not the greatest for business. It is great for basketball. It's great for this idealistic notion that no matter where you are, no matter what you do, where you play, you too can have a chance to play for a championship. I love the fact that it's old school in the notion that these are now two of the longer tenured coaches out there. When you talk about Eric Spoelstra, who I think is number 2 to Greg Popovich, and Mike Malone's been in Denver for a while. The fact that they stayed the course and that they have built this, I would argue, I was thinking this morning, the fact that Denver and the Nuggets are a little bit off the radar probably helped and is one of the reasons Mike Malone still has this job, because there was less scrutiny on them. Some of their playoff shortcomings were not blown up to be emergencies. So I think he benefited from that. But he needs to realize that, yes, there is a reason why it would be better for the league to have LeBron James and the Lakers and the Celtics in the finals. They drive the TV ratings. The TV ratings are what's responsible for increasing the network contracts that are paid for the rights to the NBA. And that's what makes this whole thing work, right?
Yeah, I know. And it's so, and it's tough. It's tough because generally you can have one market like Denver. As long as you have, and you were covering these teams, you were there. I know you weren't on the beat at the time, but you were a columnist. 97, 98, when you have Michael Jordan taking on Chicago, media market, number 2 or number 3? Chicago taking on Utah, so low in the market I can't even count. Probably somewhere in the 20s.
But you had Michael Jordan. It didn't matter. And to date, the most watched game ever, Jordan in Game 6. That's the most watched NBA game ever. And it came when the Bulls won their 6th championship in 8 years. So the opposite of democracy, right? That was imperial, what the Bulls did. And guess what? The fans loved it. The fans love dynasties. They love watching greatness. You don't think they'd rather see LeBron again? It would be a better storyline. It would attract more interest from the public to see LeBron trying to get one more than trying to see Jokic break through. Now, in the long term, it will be better because Jokic can validate himself. Jokic can become a superstar in his own right, and he's played like a superstar for several years now. But he hasn't all the trappings of superstardom, right? Same as Giannis. Giannis was a 2-time MVP who kept going out early in the playoffs, realized he needed to get better. His best wasn't good enough, got even better, won a championship, and now you see him a lot more in commercials. I think we'll see a lot more of Jokic if he goes on and wins this championship and gets the Bill Russell Finals MVP.
And you know what? This is really, this goes beyond basketball, man. This is like, this is some life stuff here, J.A. We try to tell, you probably tell your students, I tell my students that it's not really about the glitz and the glamour. It's about substance. It's about substance. Like what's between your ears. That, forget about all the superficial stuff. But the network stories tell a very superficial story. It's a very superficial
It's show
story.
business.
I mean, it is.
At the end of the day, it is show business. It's a show and it's business.
That's right. I mean, the Nuggets play a great brand of basketball. They really do. And I want to shout out, I have this in the feed, I need to shout out old school. They're standing on some mile-high shoulders, these Nuggets. Some of these old school Nuggets who were entertaining. I grew up watching some of these teams. I knew they were never going to get to the NBA Finals. They didn't play a lick of defense, but they were so much fun to watch. They were fast-paced. Alex. So at one point, they had 3 20-point scorers on the same team. You had Alex English, Kiki Vandeweghe, Dan Issel, all averaged 20 points plus in a season. They only won like 44, 45 games because they'd score a bunch and they give up a bunch. They were usually good for a first or second round exit, but after them, Fat Lever in there.
I was about to give my shout out to Fat Lever, who pop up and get a triple-double now and then, too.
Mess around. 6'3", 6'4", getting a triple-double. A guard getting 20 rebounds.
Michael Adams. Jacking up shots?
Michael Adams. How about another dude? They had an old school dude who used to come off the bench. It was a gunner. I think his name was Mike Evans. Is that right? Or maybe am I getting him confused? Mike Evans, right? Used to come in and fire it up. I like some of their defensive specialists. They had T.R. Dunn. They had Bill.
So T.R. Dunn played in the highest scoring game ever, right? So that highest scoring game was that Nuggets against the Pistons.
What he scored?
Triple
2?
overtime. He scored like 6 points.
2 or 4 points.
And I used to tease him, like, how you going to play in the highest scoring game ever and scoring single digits? But he was a defensive specialist. They needed one on that team, right? Couldn't have everyone scoring 20 points. Somebody had to play defense. That was T.R. Dunn. Theodore Roosevelt Dunn's responsibility.
But what would you do? Okay, what would you do in this situation? You know, I'm talking about this great brand of basketball, and the people want the stars. They want a certain kind of star too. They want established stars, because I don't think the Milwaukee Phoenix series, which was a great series, went 6 games. Phoenix won the first 2. Milwaukee wins 4 straight. Giannis 50 in Game 6. Great series, and it's Giannis. I don't think that did well ratings-wise compared to some of the other, Warriors. I know it didn't. Warriors, Cavaliers. Right. Even though that started off as a nice little rivalry. Warriors win the first one. Cavaliers come back from 3-1 down to win it. Then after that, when they got Durant, those were not really competitive series.
But you still have star power.
It.
Right.
But what would you do if you're the commissioner? Say, you were a commissioner. Forget about Adam Silver. Adam Silver is now, he's going to step aside. J.A. Adande is going to take over for 2 years. You'll be commissioner for 2 years. Would you, and let's be honest here, would you consciously think about getting stars, positioning stars to play in the finals? Would you change
here's what I wouldn't do
to make sure you got a star?
I would do the opposite of what they've done, which is they're trying to basically make it financially impossible to put together another Warriors type run, right? And to bring in a Kevin Durant on top of Steph Curry and a Klay Thompson. They're going to make it so punitive with the luxury tax, and they're also going to affect what you can do on the margins, right? So in addition to not being able to bring another superstar, you're not going to be able to bring it in like a mid-level exception guy. They're going to make it so that if you're above certain luxury tax levels, you can't participate in the buyout market, right? Which is how, say, the Miami Heat, when they brought in Chris Anderson off a buyout, the Birdman, and he played a pivotal role in helping them get to one of their championships when LeBron was in Miami, right? So all these little things, I would not punish the teams that have done the most to make your league a viable entertainment product, right? The teams that are not tanking, the teams that are actively going out there and trying to amass as much talent as possible, because that's traditionally what has driven the league. The Bulls, the Lakers in the 80s, Shaq and Kobe,
Celtics,
the Warriors recently,
them,
these super teams, the Miami Heat were great for business. And all these teams that complained about, it's collusion. It's not collusion when the players get together to do it themselves. It's collusion when teams do something. But no one complains when the Miami Heat came to town and you sold out your building, right? Do you think anyone complains when the Golden State Warriors come to town and you sell out your building? Anyone complains? They're certainly not complaining in the offices of Bristol, Connecticut, where ESPN is, when the Warriors are driving up their TV ratings, right? So these things are all good for the overall benefit of the sport. More money comes into the sport. Is it good for the competitive balance of the sport? Not necessarily. But tell me when the NBA has ever been driven by competitive balance. When you think of the golden eras of the league, it hasn't been competitively balanced.
Oh my God. Listen, J.A., this is the most balanced the NBA has been in decades. I mean, if you just look at the 1980s, forget about it. You had like 3 teams. Yeah, they pretty much should have had their round robin. It was the Lakers, Celtics, Sixers, and throw the Rockets or somebody a bone. But pretty much these teams, if the Celtics weren't representing the East, it was the Sixers. And if the Lakers weren't representing the West, and the Pistons, sorry, Detroit.
1980 to 1987.
Let me throw Detroit in there, because when if you ignore the Pistons even for a little bit, even just for a second, wait a minute, see, we're not getting our respect, we're not getting our props. Sit down, Isaiah. I didn't forget you. Okay, all right, Lane Beer, we got you. But really, it was Detroit.
But it took them the whole decade
Boston,
to break through.
Yeah.
And Philly.
But really, Boston,
That's
Philly,
it from 80
Detroit.
to 87 out of the East. Right.
That's it.
And in the West,
And
it
in
was
the
the
West,
Lakers and the
you
Rockets
had the
got through a
Lakers,
couple times.
Lakers and Rockets,
The Rockets
right?
got through a couple times. The Spurs were there, and the Nuggets, those rainbow, City Edition jersey Nuggets, the Skyline, those Nuggets, they, I wouldn't even say they knocked on the door. They wiped their feet on the mat. They didn't even get to reach out and knock on the door. They were in the front lawn. The Nuggets were in the front lawn, but they were fun to watch.
That's why I'm so happy for them.
But you know what? But when we got to money time, it was time for the Lakers and the Celtics. That's what CBS was paying the money for.
They were the scheduled opponent. They were the scheduled, entertaining opponent, but they really weren't on the verge
SD Jones,
of kicking in the door.
In wrestling.
That's right.
SD Jones. He wasn't about to win the championship, but you'd see him every Saturday, right?
So I can't wait to be pleasantly surprised as we wrap this and talk about, I'd say, tantrum is not the right word. It wasn't a tantrum last night. It was an emotional moment. I'm going to define it as an emotional moment. We will talk about that on the other side of Denver Lakers. We talked about Denver, but there's a Lakers storyline where I say it was a very emotional moment after the game. We should not read too much into this emotional moment, J.A. Adande. I'll leave it at that.
I like to say it's a successful year because I don't play for anything besides winning championships at this point in my career, and I don't get a kick out of making a conference appearance. I've done it a lot, and and it's not fun to me to not be able to be a part of getting to the finals, but we'll see. We'll see what happens going forward. But I don't know. I got a lot to think about, to be honest. And just for me personally, going forward with the game of basketball, got a lot to think about.
All right, Natalie is here. Natalie, tell me, I know you are a huge LeBron James fan. And tell me if I'm being too cynical when I say that I think LeBron James was disappointed after scoring 31 points in the first half yesterday. He had a 40-point game, almost messed around and had a triple-double in their closing game against Denver. Well, they got closed out.
Right, they're the
closees. He looked at it like, we're not going to the finals. It's over. I'm upset. I'm exhausted. I played hurt. I thought we might be able to extend this run. And so now I think he's just emotional. I would be shocked. I really would be stunned if LeBron James put that out there as the seed for retirement, and then we find out a month later LeBron James is called it a career. I don't think it's going to go down like that. One, because of it was hours, not even hours, minutes after the game. Two, he's too much of a storyteller that I think his retirement is going to be a whole production. I really do. What do you think, Natalie?
I agree with you. Look, first of all, I don't think LeBron James says anything without thinking it through, right? Even in him responding and reacting and being emotional, maybe that's not right word, but just reacting in the moment. And I do think there's some genuineness there in terms of just him probably being tired and exhausted and father time catching up with you and just, realizing that. So I do think that's real. And I think he has options because he's LeBron James, right? I mean, we see him do things all the time he's never done. What if he takes a break for a year and then comes back rejuvenated? He can do that. He's LeBron James. I agree that he will not retire without it being a production. Nike, the networks, everyone has too much to make from that, including himself. So I don't think it would just be some short hey, now later it comes out that he's retiring. So, he's also walked back his stance a little bit about his son, it seems. Before he's been expressing that he wants to play with him. Apparently, Dave McMenamin from ESPN's reporting that now he's saying, he's okay or he's fine with it, with not necessarily playing with him. So we'll see. Again, a lot of this seems reactionary, but no, I don't think this will be the end of LeBron James in the NBA.
And Natalie, you talked about the emotions of the moment. And one thing I learned is to not take anything too seriously that's said in the wake of a loss, a season-ending loss, right? Covering college basketball in the 90s, back when there was more doubt about whether players were going to leave to go to the pros or come back. Now we know going in, the top players, they're one and done. But there used to be some doubt about guys like Jerry Stackhouse, say, when he was in North Carolina. And they'd lose an NCAA tournament and they'd say, oh, I don't know, I think I might want to stay. I really like it here, my teammates and Coach Smith and all that stuff. And then a couple of days later, once I think they'd had a chance to run the numbers and had some sense talked into them, they're like, yeah, we're going to go to the pros. So people make emotional statements, but yes, LeBron knows better than to make this decision in the moment. So he'll take all the time he needs, probably go on a yacht somewhere in the Mediterranean this summer and contemplate. I guess we haven't really thought about the pros versus the cons, right? What more does he have to play for? If there's a new king or ruler out west, if he doesn't see himself on a team that can get past these Nuggets for the near future, and if he's saying he's only playing for championships, and his best is not enough to beat a Jokic, I mean, that was a pretty great LeBron game last night, and it still wasn't enough to beat Jokic and the Nuggets at home. So what's he got to play for?
Well, that's because you need Anthony Davis to be the best player on the team, and he was not. So, I thought it was a really great insight, though, when he said that, because it lets you know, and he's also letting the Lakers know, that this team as constructed isn't enough, whether it's to compete versus the Nuggets or potentially other teams, because we don't know what the offseason is going to bring to us.
Yeah, and the other thing is, this is why I know he's not retiring, because at the end of that interview, I don't know if McManaman ran it in the sequence that the conversation flowed, but at the end of the story, he said, I'm still better than 90% of the NBA, maybe 95. Okay, dude, when you think like that, if you're thinking like that, you ain't ready. You ain't ready to like, I'm at peace. Guys who are ready say, I'm at peace. I've proven everything. Like, oh, I can still go. He's still competitive. I mean, I don't think he's ready to set it, to put it aside yet. But Natalie, you brought up something, and I want to get your both of your takes on this one, because I thought this was an important point. You brought up the whole Bronny thing, how he's kind of backed away. He wanted to play with Bronny, and now he's going with hey, his journey is his journey, and I had my journey. We're here to support him. I think that is such a wise decision, because Bronny, you put, and I know, hey, Bronny can handle it. He's a charismatic kid. He's doing great. Bronny's got more Instagram followers than Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown. Okay, like he's doing well. Okay, he's great. He's got his own brand. He's got commercials. But I feel like if LeBron makes it about playing with Bronny, he unintentionally makes it about him and not about his son. At some point, you have to step aside and let your son do what he's going to do. And you don't know if he's going to make it to the pros. There are a lot of 6'3", great wing defenders, 3-and-D guys who don't make it in the NBA. So I think LeBron is very wise. I think this is the father in him saying, wait a minute. I may have taken this thing too far. Maybe somebody is going to misinterpret. This is all love here, but it could be twisted, and it might put undue pressure on my son. I want to know what you guys think of that.
Yeah, I think that's definitely, a possibility, and I'm sure. I mean, I think in general, he's probably trying to figure out how to navigate this situation because it's so unique, right? And he already knows that because of who he is, his son, both of his sons, eventually, but like, there's just going to be always comparisons to him. It will always be like, Bronny comparison to his father, even though they're different builds, they don't play like similarly. So I think figuring out the best way to handle it, like they're doing this in real time. So that has to be a part of his thought process. And you also don't want your son's first season, should you even make it that long, to be all about you and not him.
And also he's talking about, recognizing that this is Bronny's journey now and his choices.
Right.
And regardless of whether or not Bronny stays in college, he's college age now for these next few years. And what's the best part about when you're college age, of that age? You don't have to be around your parents, right? So who would want to have to sign up for flights, bus rides, meetings, practices, games, locker rooms with your dad? The team lands in New York. Hey, Bronny, what you about to? Oh, we're about to hit the club. Oh, really? I was thinking we could have dinner. Okay, Dad.
No, right. No. All right. Or dad start wagging a finger like, "Hey, man, are you serious about this journey? Are you serious about this? You think the best thing for you is to be going to the club?" Like, hey, man, you were 19 once, you were 20 once. You wasn't always in strive for greatness. That wasn't always on your T-shirts and your hats. You hung out too. But yeah, that's a good point.
I do want to say, NBA Twitter theories here, but also like LeBron James is probably a very smart man, because by doing this and talking about potential retirement, he does take away from the fact that the Lakers got swept, and that, the news will be less focused on the Lakers sweep, his sweep, not saying that, he's been swept before. He's LeBron James. He's great. He's going down in history as one of the greatest, to some, the greatest. But now the attention is less focused on Denver and the sweep and more about, is LeBron going to retire? So, I mean, he's,
Natalie,
genius.
And in some ways, things have come full circle, because when LeBron first broke through and got to the NBA Finals in 2007, and you had a slightly older Kobe Bryant, he was younger back then, but he was a lot older and further along in his career than LeBron James. What happened? That's when he started, I want to get traded, trade me. He was going on this trade me campaign, stealing all the attention away from LeBron James and the NBA Finals, right? He couldn't stand to not be the center of attention. And now here's an aging LeBron James worried about falling out of the limelight. And here he is taking away all the attention from the Denver Nuggets and this team that's going to its first finals trip.
Yeah,
Come
that's good.
full circle.
Now, see, I don't know. I think both of you have probably said the word swept. I think I've heard it 2 or 3 times now, 4 times. So how have we not mentioned the Boston Celtics, who are on the verge of getting swept by the Miami Heat? And that, where I've stood on this. I mean, Tom Haberstroh, I was just aghast. Tom Haberstroh was on the show last week. He said it's going to be a sad series for Jason Tatum and the Boston Celtics. He said, I got Miami in 6, and he went too far. I think it's going to be Miami in 4. And that thought to me last week, I couldn't imagine. I couldn't reconcile that last week, that Miami would be able to not only win this thing in 4, but to do it so convincingly. Nat first, then J.A. How did we get here? What is it about Miami that has allowed them to have this great position that they're in right now?
Yeah, well, I'll tell you, Michael, our audience did not appreciate you and I laughing when Tom Haberstroh came on here and said what he said. And I don't know if you and I were laughing for the same reason, but because I didn't initially laugh when he said, the Heat would win. I think prior to this series, I don't mean at the beginning of the playoffs, because I think we have to separate both things. Before the playoffs started, no one saw Miami here, including Heat fans, maybe just the Heat team and Jimmy Butler. So anyone suggesting otherwise, that they saw the Heat getting here, that's not true. But I think as the postseason continued, and once they got past, honestly, the Bucks, then it started to be like, hey, there may be potential for something here. And so I don't think it was a crazy pick prior to the series for people to go with Miami when you think of what they did last year versus the Celtics. And then also the Celtics, we know their inconsistency. We've heard the phrase, the Celtics play with their food, right? We've heard that throughout. So I don't think it was a crazy thought to think that. I think people lean the Celtics, and I think the odds were with the Celtics because in theory, they are the better team, or at least they are the more talented team, right? In terms of the players and their abilities. And so when Tom came on, he was just so definitive, and it wasn't just his pick, but he was just like, Jimmy Butler's the best player in the series, sort of just like dismissed Jason Tatum. And so like, I was taken aback. I'm like, wow, oh my gosh. And so, but our audience did not appreciate our reaction. So I think this is how we get here, like, I think everyone is about Jimmy, playoff Jimmy, the Butler. He has all the nicknames in this postseason, but it's just remarkable, the turnaround. And you're still a little bit stunned as you're watching it happen.
And it goes back to, I think, the series was really in the balance at the end of game 2, right? The Celtics win that. Now you only have to win one game in Miami. It's a longer series if they win that game. And the fact that Jimmy Butler was allowed to win that game for the Heat, whereas the Heat did not allow Jason Tatum. They were saying Jason Tatum is not going to beat us, right? We're going to get the ball in his hands. We're going to double team him out beyond the 3-point line. We're going to force him into turnovers, all this stuff. Jason Tatum is not beating us. Whereas the Celtics did not make that same decision for Jimmy Butler. And as a result, Jimmy Butler did beat them. And when they finally did decide to do that, Jimmy Butler had a pretty ordinary game in game 3, but by then it was too late. By then, his confidence had surged throughout the whole team, and the whole team felt like, hey, we could do this. Maybe the Heat didn't believe it. Natalie, I mean, they had to prove it to themselves somewhat, right? They had to know they were the underdogs. They didn't think they didn't reasonably expect to go in and win 2 in the Garden and take command of the series that way. But by game 3, oh yeah, we got these guys. Yeah. We see the fear in his eyes. We see the disarray, and it's all because Jimmy Butler was allowed to light that fuse.
And you know what? I love watching it. I really do. Like, I'm here in Boston, and I get to hear all the panic, and I get to see it up close. But I really love the Miami story, though. The Jimmy Butler story. This is about relationships too. This is a relationship. I hope this helps somebody today who's been with the wrong partner. You're gonna find the right partner. So, the wrong partner for Jimmy Butler at the end was Chicago. Wrong partner.
It's killing me here in Chicago to think he was here. Right. They drafted him and helped build him into what he became today.
But at the end,
and somehow they made it up that we can't make this work with him. Somehow they reached that conclusion.
So he was too much for them. He wasn't right for Chicago. He wasn't right for Minnesota. He wasn't right for Philadelphia. Remember him last year? They chose Tobias Harris over me. They chose him over me. He took it personally. So Miami was able to absorb all the things that Jimmy Butler is. Now, we're talking about playoff Jimmy and the greatness that he displays on the big stage. But Jimmy Butler can be abrasive. He can be a little loud. He can rub people the wrong way. Miami says, bring all your flaws, baby. That James Brown, I don't care about your past. I just want our love to last. So Miami takes all of Jimmy Butler. There it is. They take all of Jimmy Butler, and now he's empowered, and he empowers everybody else. I mean, I'm telling you, I love what they're doing. And guess what? I'm going to say it here. I was wrong last week. The Miami Heat are a better team, period. No qualifiers. They're a better team than the Celtics. And because they do all the things that good teams have to do, you can't say we're more talented, but you won't pay the price. You won't play defense. You won't pass the ball. You won't stick to your principles. You fall apart in the last 2 or 3 minutes. I don't care about your talent. If you can't take care of the details, no, you're not the better team. And Miami is better. That's why they're going to sweep the Celtics.
Yeah, I mean, I think it should be noted, though, also, like, if you just look at the trajectory of Jimmy's career as you sort of went through it, like, Jimmy Butler's, 33? Is that correct, I think? So Jimmy, I think, because you brought up Michael, and I think it was valid when you brought up the fact that, he has, some inconsistent games and, back and forth. And I think this is the most complete we've seen, even playoff Jimmy Buckets, whatever nickname you want to use. This is the best postseason version of him we've ever seen on a consistent game-to-game basis. And, I think there was always some questions about, is he a true number one? Or is he really maybe your second option? And I think he is, but that goes to show you how it does take time in the NBA to get there. Like, he's been a very good player for a long time, but I would say, he's even stepped it up to another level. But look how long it took him to get there to be this player. So just to say, like, when we kind of discount these other guys like Tatum, who is still very young, and I think we forget because of how many Eastern Conference finals he's been to and the fact that he's been to the finals, he may take longer, but doesn't mean that he can't get there, because look at what Jimmy Butler is doing now.
Natalie, I think this goes back to the bubble, though, in 2020. And when somehow the Heat took that series to 6 games, which none of us saw coming, and Jimmy Butler was solely responsible for winning the 2 games that Miami won, that changed my view of him. I didn't have him as a guy who can win you 2 games in the finals by himself. He wasn't in that category before that. Since that, none of this is surprising to me. And I agree with you, Natalie. I don't think we've seen him play this well over a sustained stretch, even in that 2020 bubble run. But I can't say I'm surprised by that. He proved to me that he belonged in that category. And it's maybe just a notch below he can carry you to a championship. But if he can carry you to a 6th game of the finals, then yeah, that's elite territory that he's in.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I always said if Bam wasn't injured, that series could have looked different, but whatever.
He was a made man after that, in my eyes.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Well, one day when we have time, we'll talk about, because this story's not going anywhere, a little story, and maybe it's conveniently coming out now, that the Celtics, part of their issue is they're still upset about Ime Udoka and how that situation was handled, and they never quite, as a team, bought in on Joe Mazzulla. Now, I didn't hear this after they beat Atlanta 4-2. I didn't hear this after Jason Tatum had 51 points in Game 7. Now I'm hearing this, they're down 3. But I think the Udoka thing is still an issue with some guys on that roster, and maybe it will cost, that and other things will cost Joe Mazzulla his job. But they still caping. Some of these guys really caping for Ime Udoka, but he's got a job now, guys. He's in Houston, and so I don't think he's coming back. But anyway, we'll see what happens tonight. Sweep tonight on the way out. Jay, you got a sweep?
Yeah.
Yeah. The C in Celtics stands for Cancun right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
All right, Cancun.
And I love the Celtics, but I don't think they're going to be able. Their spirit looks taken, like it got tooken from the last game. So.
Good looking as this seat tooken.
Rakim, shout out Rakim. I see you there.
Hello, good looking as this seat tooken.
Oh, I love it. Is that mahogany?
Mahogany, yeah.
So, J.A., I just don't know what to do when I get an invitation for an event at Dodger Stadium. I don't know if I should just RSVP and say I'm going to be there, or do I wait for them to uninvite me and then to invite me again? I just don't know. I don't know if I trust an invitation from the LA Dodgers. So they uninvited some folks. They invited them to Pride Night. They uninvited them. Now they're inviting them back. Please help me understand the Dodgers and the LGBTQ group that they keep messing around with Pride Night.
Yeah, it's the Sisters of Perpetual Indulgence, which I was not aware of this group before the controversy. They've been around for a long time, though. And, they've offended some because they wear nun attire. They've been accused thusly of being anti-Catholic, even though their mission, I would think, aligns with the church, and that, they're trying to help people. They're trying to do good in the community. They do so in a way that you could say, mocks religion in the way that they've appropriated the nun costumes and other religious aspects, the trappings of Catholicism, which angered some Catholic groups who have called them anti-Catholic, which that's the key. Is are they anti-Catholic, or are they just not opposed to the Catholic faith, but just out here trying to tweak it? And does that outdo the good that they've done, which is why the Dodgers wanted to recognize them in the first place? But the Dodgers basically initially, catering to the Marco Rubios of the world, who aren't even in their community. So I don't know why they'd be so worried about what these groups have to say. You should be honoring the people in your community that you were reaching out to initially. And so the lack of backbone, that happened initially, and allowing some loud people that don't represent the entirety of the community to dictate what you will and won't do. And that's the disturbing thing. And you wonder if that's the precedent that was set here.
Well, listen, the precedent, and I really appreciate the way you laid that out perfectly, so everybody can really, understand the issues here. But I'm going to say that the precedent was set many, many years ago. So long ago, I don't even know where it started. I'm just going to say this, J.A., in general, not to paint with a broad brush, but to paint with a broad brush. In general, corporations, large corporations, are usually late to what the people want. Okay, corporations will see the people at the grassroots level kind of rally around something, promote something, whether it's an idea, whether it is a person. They'll see that momentum and then they'll get on board. They'll be like, hey, wait a minute. We can put our corporate name behind this. People are into it. It seems like most people like it. It's good for our business. We'll endorse it. But they're usually waiting to see which way the wind blows before they get in. So corporations often don't lead, they'll follow. And this is the case right here. They're following. I happen to think they followed ultimately in the right direction. When they invited, they were following. Good. When they uninvited, okay, history's not going to be on your side. Then they invited again. They're following in a good way. And the second thing is, when you talk about being accused of being anti-Catholic or anti-religious, can I just say that nobody really owns it? Nobody owns religion. I mean, how many Catholics are in the world? So if you are Catholic and you are around a lot of other Catholics and they are like-minded, that is great. You have found a community, and I'm all for that. But you do not speak for Catholics who may have a different variation or may have a different interpretation of something that you believe and you disagree. That doesn't make you right or them wrong, or doesn't make them right or make you right and them wrong, or vice versa. Anyway, it's just too big. Religions are too big for somebody to say, I am Catholic, therefore, if you feel this way, you're anti-Catholic. Says who? How do you know
Excellent
that?
point. And Michael, communities are too big to really be able to wrap your arms around, right? And so what we've seen sports leagues do is think that, okay, if we change our logo on social media to incorporate the rainbow colors, that's reaching out to the LGBTQ plus community. That's the style that AP is going with these days. That's sufficient. If we have a game where our players wear rainbow logos, that's enough, without doing the real work necessary, right? Without truly making this community feel welcome and feel incorporated into your team and your franchise and what you're doing and your fan base, right? Are you really reaching out to them and taking the step? And we're seeing the attempts to sort of smooth over some deeply held beliefs on both sides, right? And we keep seeing these issues. It seems to happen in the NHL more. We've seen it happen in baseball as well, where it's Pride Night. We're going to wear the rainbow logos, but maybe one guy doesn't want to do it. And you know what? I'm not convinced that they should have to do that, right? I don't agree with their beliefs if they say that this goes against, I can't even allow myself to wear something for one night in support of another community because that goes against who I am. Well, then I question what your beliefs are. But you know what? I do believe you shouldn't be forced to do anything that you don't want to, right? You shouldn't be forced to make a statement that you don't want to. So, but now you've got, okay, well, we're just not going to do it at all. If we're not going to have everybody wear it, then we're just going to call off our Pride Night and we'll just go out and wear the regular jerseys. So you see how problematic this is when you think the solution is if you put on a cap that has rainbow colors on it, you're going to make things better. You know, you haven't had the discussion previously, right? Have you talked about it with all the members of your team to gauge how they feel before you're going to publicly announce what you're going to do?
Yeah.
You know, and so let's have more conversing. Let's have more discussion rather than more labeling,
reaction,
right? A Pride Night,
or
right?
Yeah,
we're calling it Pride Night. We're going to wear the jersey. It's all good now.
Yeah, I wonder if some players would say, okay, I don't want to talk about it, not because I'm anti this or anti that, but hey, I'm 2 for my last 48, and I just want to focus on getting out of my batting slump or whatever it is. Now, some players will just be so focused, they're so locked in on what they're doing that, hey, whatever you do, it's fine. But there are some players, I'm not trying to minimize, the importance of the issues, but there are some players who really would want to have a conversation with the front office, community relations, whoever is responsible for putting these nights together. I think they would like to be brought in and have their opinions heard on the best ways to hold these kinds of nights. But you have skated right into my lane when you talk about people who get on board without having to do the work. You and I both know just a little something about academia, and that is a place where sometimes the phrases are put out there, but the question of what does that mean? What do you think that means is not asked enough. It's popular to talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion, and you just put that out there. Okay, but what does that really mean? You can't just say, I'm on a DEI committee. I believe in DEI, so therefore leave me alone. No, we're just starting the conversation. This is not the end of it. This is just the beginning. But anyway, we could talk about this all day
you
long.
repeatedly hear,
go ahead. Last word. Last word.
Yeah, well, just real quick, I really believe our university has the best intentions, right? In trying to create a diverse and equitable and inclusive environment. And yet we repeatedly hear from the students that they don't feel that way, that it's not having the intended effect, right? And so it's up to us, the faculty administration, to listen and to see what more we can do, right? So there needs to be more listening rather than labeling. I'll leave it at that.
Yeah. Okay, last one. Oh, you said it. You said a word there, because I think that's the key. It's hard for anyone to listen. Anyone who is told, I don't like what you're doing or you're not doing enough, our instinct is to be defensive. Well, what do you mean? What do you mean? Well, what about this? You want to start giving all your highlights. You want to give your resume and all the things that you've done. People don't want to hear that. It's hard to listen. Sometimes you just got to sit there and take it.
To the Dodgers' credit, they heard the outrage and they relented. So good for them for getting it right ultimately, even if they didn't get it right.
But Dodgers still don't trust you on your invitations, though.
Not a good look, though.
I don't know. I don't know about y'all invitations. All right, J.A., I just can't keep up with Tom Brady. All right, I can't keep up with him. So Tom Brady, he's going to be a minority owner of the Las Vegas Raiders. And Mark Davis is excited about it. Meanwhile, Tom Brady still has a large contract with Fox, over $300 million contract with Fox to be a broadcaster. Fox has blessed the arrangement for Brady to be a part owner and also to be a broadcaster. Of course they blessed it. I mean, you want to talk about an advantage? J.A., okay, hey, Tom Brady comes into a production meeting. But that's no different.
He's got the inside scoop, but Shaq had ownership in the Kings with TNT. Grant Hill is still doing games on CBS during the tournament and on TNT, and he's got an ownership stake in the Atlanta Hawks. So it wouldn't be unprecedented. What is sad about it to me, what's sad about it to me is that he should have ownership stake in the Patriots or the
journalism
Buccaneers.
Professor.
There's all kinds of conflicts. That
Right.
ship has sailed, the conflict of interest. But I'm
gone.
just sad
Gone.
that he should have a stake in the Patriots or in at the very least the Buccaneers. What's he doing with the Raiders? You know how they get it's like when Michael Jordan was with the Wizards and not with the Bulls. Like, we can't get these guys some ownership shares when they made those franchises.
I'm going to take that's great. That's cute. You want to talk about a ship sailing? All right, we start off the show with Michael Malone saying family on 3. That sounds good. But the Patriots are, I think, the second or third most valuable franchise in the world. So for Tom Brady to be a part owner, Robert Kraft, hey, I look at Brady like a son, go have to give up some of that money. And I just don't think he's down with it. He's not. He doesn't need to. Whereas Mark Davis, he is one of the more cash poor owners in the NFL. And I think Tom Brady is good for business. But I just think it's weird. Like a broadcaster owner, that's weird.
Yeah, we've had those things. What's also interesting to me is how, you know, there's a couple of hiccups, little bumps in the road on the way to the Josh Harris group purchasing the Washington Commanders, in part because there's concerns that he doesn't have enough cash on hand. Well, with these franchise valuations, do you realize how limited the pool is of people who can have $1 billion in cash? They might have net worths of several billions, but how much of that is actually in cash that they can fork over to the NFL immediately? And so I think it's great that the franchises are worth as much. Congratulations on you for getting this money, but you've really limited your pool now of potential owners. It's going to be even more exclusive than it's been all this time.
Speaking of forking over cash, the NFL wants you to do it, and they want you to do it on short notice. They are now flexing Thursday night football games in weeks 13 through 17. This passed by a 24-8 vote. They needed 24 owners to say yes, 24 did. And so that means, hey, you might see a Thursday night football game in December, and you have plans to go there, especially Jets at Cleveland, New Orleans, the Rams, Pittsburgh, New England at Pittsburgh,
week
and Chargers at
13
Vegas.
Is the Dallas Cowboys. They're not getting flexed anywhere. Why? Because of the ratings, which brings us back to where we were at the top of the show. The business.
But
right?
still.
The dominion of dollars. That's all that matters.
Why are they flexing Thursday night, though? Thursday, they should not be able to flex Thursday night games. I mean, you're talking about
they shouldn't,
being
but
made.
Guess what? They won't. They won't. Look at the teams that are currently slated. They ain't flexing the Steelers or the Cowboys out. That ain't happening. The dominion of dollars rules everything. There is no NFC. Right. There is no AFC. There is only money.
All money. And speaking of money, that office, that backdrop, that's money right there. That's big money. J.A. Adande, good to see you, brother. I appreciate you. Thanks for hanging out. See y'all tomorrow.
See you, Mike. Good to be back.
Hey, thank you for watching Brother from Another. If you haven't hit that subscribe button, go ahead and do that now. Don't forget, you can catch us 3 to 4 weekdays on PeacockTV.com and on Sirius XM Channel 85.